Hi, Deb K, and we're back with our West African vegetable stew, or what it started out to be anyway. Now we're cooking. Hear those onions sizzling? This is no oil. I'm going to start sticking to the bottom of the pan. I'm going to add a little bit of water. Just a couple tablespoons. And let that absorb all that good stuff that was at the bottom of the pan. When my onions are soft, and just a little bit drier after they've absorbed that water, I will add my chopped garlic. While we're waiting, we can go to this side of the pan. I've got 1 cup of quinoa coming to a boil here. That's what we're going to eat with our West African stew. It's coming to a boil. It's also cooking in vegetable broth. I like cooking my grains in vegetable broth. You can use water. I'm going to turn this down now to low. Then it's come to a boil. I'm going to cover that. And I'm going to cook that for 18 minutes. That's my magic cooking time for quinoa. I seem to have it come out perfect every time that way. You can cook your quinoa in your Instapot, but I find it actually takes longer to cook quinoa in an Instapot. They tell you, yes, you can cook your quinoa in 8 minutes, but it takes 10 minutes warm-up time, 10 minutes cool-down time, 8 minutes cooking time. You're now cooking it longer than before. So stovetop, 18 minutes is fine for your quinoa. Now the onions are looking nice and translucent and very soft and tender. I'm going to add my chopped garlic. This is hard to do. Like I mentioned, this is my first time doing a video. It's going to be bad, but maybe you'll find something easy to cook at home. You never want to add garlic to a frying pan that doesn't have something else in it, like onions or peppers, because it will burn very quickly. Alright, next step on our menu, on our recipe says to add the potatoes and the tomatoes. I did not talk about the tomatoes in my ingredients in the first video, and I should mention that. This is another substitution yet again. I've seen some posts that say, what would you do differently to prepare for an event like we're going through right now? I will be drying and canning more tomatoes this year. I've run out of my canned tomatoes. So what this is 1 can of tomato paste with about 3/4 of a cup of water. The recipe calls for 15 ounces of chopped tomatoes. You could use fresh or you could use canned. I'm going to use about maybe 1/3 of a cup of this. Maybe a little bit more to get that tomatoey flavor, but I'm not going to use too much because tomato paste is very strong. I just want to get that tomato flavor in there and in my stew. So we're going to go ahead and add those potatoes. I can't do this with, yes I can do this with 1 hand. So I'm going to go about, I don't know, 1/2 cup of the tomatoes. I might use all this, who knows? We'll use that much and see how it tastes. If we had fresh tomatoes or canned tomatoes, flush them up in here and they start to cook and bubble. Take long to get that all in there. Now, since I don't have the tomatoes with all their juice, I'm going to go ahead and add some of my broth now. I'm going to add about a cup of broth. Again, you could use water if you don't have veggie broth around. If you're just using water, maybe add a little more seasoning, like a hit of thyme in here would be nice. Alright, so we're going to let that simmer a little bit. Once that comes to a simmer, I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients. Over here on the right, I have soup stock cooking for my cooking adventures the rest of the week. All that is the skins and the ends from onions and garlic. We've got a couple chopped carrots, celery. I have a hunk of Kambu seaweed in there, which is going to bring a richness and some nutrients to our broth. I have a sweet potato, some white potatoes, peppercorns, and salt in here. I think that might be everything. I'm going to simmer that for about an hour and a half, maybe just an hour, hour and a half until it gets rich, and I'll use that broth in my cooking this week. All right, I see that we're getting a nice little simmer on this stew. I'm going to add the rest. Now, the recipe said 10 ounces of veggie broth. I actually used about 2 cups. We've got a lot of potatoes here we're going to cook down. All right, so we'll get that coming to a boil. I'm going to add the cinnamon and the chilies. Get that all stirred nice. Look how that tomato is making a really nice rich sauce there with that veggie broth. We are going to add our beans. Now this isn't a soup, this is a stew. If this was a soup, I'd be covering it with liquid. We're just going to make sure everything's kind of submerged in there so we can get those potatoes cooked. Now I hope I mentioned you can use canned beans. I always use fresh beans because I buy them in bulk. I live 20 miles from the nearest grocery store with anything I want to eat at it, so I buy things in bulk. I buy my beans 25 pounds at a time. And this week I'm really glad. All right, we're going to let that simmer a little bit. Once that comes to a simmer, I'll let it go about 5 to 7 minutes. Let those potatoes get tender, and then we're going to add our greens. So I'll be back for part 3 when the potatoes are tender.